Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know we have a few people still trickling in, but we thank you for joining us for this session as part of a webinar series within the Collaborative of Native Nations for Climate Transformation and Stewardships. The Community Conversations webinar series has covered multiple focus areas. And today we'll be focusing on the expanding landscape stewardship pathways, in which we have 5 of our partners joining us from the Connects Network and sharing the work that they've been doing over this last year. My name is Althea Walker. I am Nez Perce, Hopi, and Gila River, and the Director of Community Resilience for the Climate Science Alliance. The Climate Science Alliance is a partner within the Connects Network, and we are a nonprofit based on Kumeyaay land, otherwise known in the San Diego area. So if you aren't familiar with the Collaborative of Native Nations for Climate Transformation and Stewardship, we are a network of partners of tribal and non-tribal individuals, organizations, agencies across the region, where we come together for partnership and collaboration and bring together the work that we've all been doing over the last few years, many years, but the opportunity to bring it all together for a greater collective impact. In the Connects network, there are 5 areas that we focus on. Those 5 areas are advancing science-informed climate action, translating knowledges to practice, putting adaptation into action, expanding landscape stewardship pathways, and then supporting social entrepreneurship. And this graphic here just shows you the various things that bring us together, the partners that we bring together at the bottom of the screen that range from various universities, various tribal and non-tribal nonprofits, and then local, state, federal agencies. So again, the Connects network focuses on the 5 different areas. They're all listed here, and I just mentioned all of them. But we weave together these 5 different focus areas that ultimately supports and advances tribally led land stewardship. And then today's focus will be on expanding landscape stewardship pathways, where again, our 5 partners here who are joining us will be sharing the ways in which they've been expanding landscape stewardship pathways in the lands and areas that they all work and live on. So to share a little bit more about what the expanding landscape stewardship pathways focus area entails, really is just to build capacity through economic and workforce development, where there's opportunities for stewardship pathways training. That means just having opportunities to come around or come to convene around plant propagation, fire and fuels management, GIS, and climate and weather monitoring. And then there's also opportunities within this focus area of programming and partnerships that bring together focus groups around coastal and fire stewardship. And you'll see the examples provided by our partners here today on what this looks like in action. So the partners that have joined us today include Teresa Romero from the Native Coast Action Network, joined by Carly Dominguez from the Native Coast Action Network, Christina Cranwell from San Diego State University, Clarissa Rodriguez from San Diego State University, Gabriela Lasos from Sacred Places Institute, and Heather Constable from UC Santa Barbara Sedgwick Reserve. And by all means, please feel free to introduce yourself in your own way, and I will pass it over to Teresa and Carly.
Thank you, Althea, and I will begin to share my screen here. So I'm Teresa Romero, and I'm the president and executive director of the Native Coast Action Network. I'm one of the partners with many other partners in the Connects project, and I'm here with Carly, and maybe Carly, you'd like to introduce yourself before I move to the next slide.
Sure. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Althea. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Carly Dominguez, and I'm an Indigenous Ecology Facilitator for Native Coast Action Network. You can email me there at UC Davis. I'm also a doctoral candidate there. And yeah, that's that. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to, okay. So as Althea mentioned, the focus areas, and you may get that's a lot from us today, but our focus today is on expanding landscape stewardship pathways, and our focus has really been around fire. And as we move forward through our slides, we will talk to you a little bit about the work we've been doing and the partners and allies we've been working with, because we really wouldn't be able to do this without our partners and allies. They've been really crucial to moving this forward. And I will move on. And Carly, I'm going to let you go through the next slide.
All right, so in this slide, you can see our trip. There was a journey to Limo with all the Connects partners. Also, that happened in May, so that's about when we started our project. And with Connects, we're able to support our fire stewardship program and then our coastal resiliency gatherings. So traveling to Limu, which is Santa Cruz Island, was part of supporting coastal resiliency, and then you see here a picture of our fire stewards, our cycles of renewal, Chumash fire stewards, attending a lower lake basic training at McLaughlin Reserve, which is up north. That's a UC Davis Natural Reserve. And we were just able to support with travel and logistics. And then recently at the Santa Barbara Treks, we had some of our cycles of renewal participants there, as well as this picture in particular is also part of a cultural fire stewardship training or cultural fire, good fire training we were able to do as part of the Santa Barbara Treks. And part of going out to the Lake Fire Burn Scar, which Connects has really supported, is showing that cultural fire practitioners are extremely involved in post-fire monitoring and all, like, it's so funny, I'm like seasonal and generational monitoring of plants, right? So that means we're looking at annual cycles and generational cycles. And I would like to add, Teresa mentioned this, but these projects are really done in connection with people. And so with Lower Lake basic training and the Sedgwick Reserve, some of our partners were UC Davis Native American Studies, as well as Cal Poly Fuels and Fire Education Program.
All right. And so as part of our work, we are connecting with community. And this is one of the ways we did that. We held a tribal listening session to focus on understanding priorities for impacts to climate change and build resiliency in our Indigenous communities along the coast. We held a gathering and we had about 24 people and representation from Chumash and Salinan tribal members and Tongva tribal members as well came up from just south of us to join us and discuss priorities. And we have some photos here. These are specific to the listening session. And we are very thankful because folks from Climate Science Alliance were also in attendance with us to help us with facilitation. And it was a really wonderful listening session. We'll plan to have another listening session next year as well. And hope to have more folks attend. And on the right here, you can see some of the notes that we had taken on the priorities. These are specific priorities that folks came up with during the listening session. And we'll continue to deepen that work and continue to connect with coastal communities later in 2025.
And I just want to add to that slide a little bit of what was said over the day. We closed with a question, and this is a question that's really important to us. What does coastal tribal resiliency look like? So we asked all participants to respond, and I want to share some of their responses because I think it's really powerful and important that people stepped up and said what they want to see in their community. And I think you'll hear a lot of overlap with what you hear with like ocean conservationists as well and other scientists and folks. So anyone working in coastal resiliency really. So some of the things that were shared were keeping on tribal educational shoreline restoration, fishing, harvesting, seagrass weaving, kelp restoration, all historical tribal practices restored. It's all about the water, ocean, rivers, the water that falls from the sky, clean waters, healthy ocean life, safety on shore, which includes trash removal, coastal plant medicine revival, family gatherings throughout the year, and food directly from the ocean, employment opportunities for tribal coastal restoration programs, Indigenous land floating schools for tribal youth above and below water, tribal-led coastal dune and wetland walks, gathering food directly from our shores, including include access and cultural practice for all local tribes, thriving healthy shellfish in and around the shore, seasonal and generational planning, hot springs as healing sites, Tamil culture, clean and useful wet lunch as star knowledge, and a question, how far does the coast go? Like that was kind of the closing.
Thank you, Carly. And up next we have relationships and reciprocity. And I guess I can go through the slide, and there's some pretty impactful photos here. And the first photo is a picture of a rainbow, which is Wishoyo in our Shumashmuwich language, which occurred at the Santa Barbara Treks. And it was quite stunning and powerful to us because it's part of our creation story to have the rainbow appear. And it really was a true blessing for us about what was happening that day. In the middle is a photo of Carly, myself, and one of our fire sisters, Elena Rios, has been a firefighter for about, well, just a very long time, rather than identify exactly how old she might be. She's been working with fire for decades, actually, and it was really, really powerful to have her there and be in our circle to help facilitate a space for Indigenous attendees at the Santa Barbara Treks. We had a number of Indigenous attendees, which made up about a quarter of the actual folks that attended the treks. So that was pretty amazing to us. And on the right is a photo of the circle that was created by Elena. And we have Ben Charlie here, who is now passed on, but he spent his life working in fire and training other Indigenous community members to be on the fire path. And we brought him in with us, with the Indigenous attendees. And it was very powerful. And the words that were shared by others in that circle were amazing. And folks were very open. So it was very, very powerful. And it was the first time we've been able to do this at a Trex, and we hope to be able to continue this forward at a future Trex too. And Carly, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I'll just emphasize how important our connections are with each of these all these folks. So the work we're doing in Connect's connected to you all, and CSA, and then also connected to like the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center funding a lot of our work in our fire stewardship program, and also Cal Poly, like I mentioned. And then there's also the Nature Conservancy and UC Davis Native American Studies, and then also just our Chumash family and community that comes through in so many ways that, that's beyond funding resources. So thank you.
Thanks. And that's what we have for you today. So I thank you. There's our contact information, and I will pass it back to Althea.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Carly, and thank you, Carly's dog, for putting in their 2 cents. I have 2 questions. So, going back to the listening session that you all hosted, how did you go about including California Tribal Nation representatives at the session? And can you please include the Kumeyaay Nation 12 federally recognized bands at your next listening session? Question mark.
We would be happy to have the Kumeyaay community at our next listening session. So I'll make sure to reach out to the folks I know in the Kumeyaay community. And if you would like us to include you specifically, you can contact us directly. And when we have our invitation, we'll be happy to send it out. And our focus for our work with the Connects Project is from roughly Ventura County up to about Santa Cruz County. So that's the area we're focusing for our listening sessions in our work. But we would happy to have you join us. Absolutely. So thank you. Carly, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add in terms of like how do we reach out to people or connect with people? I think both Teresa and I have like these connections span for years or decades. It's not these are not connections that were just made in the last 9 months. And I think that's really important and something I've been trying to get a hold of. How do we communicate that to people that outreach and engagement, for us at least, looks more like community building and community resilience. It's not something that we just do because, somebody's a stakeholder. Like we definitely consider a bigger picture. And a lot of these projects are really generational too, thinking about our connections with our oceans and generations of families that have been there, have been here for over 10,000 years and will continue to be here. So it's like a different, like that's like when we talk about how do we outreach, it comes from that broad scope.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thanks,
And that
Carly.
question I forgot to mention was from Emily Burgueño, and you guys are already connected, so you have each other's contact, and hopefully you guys can
Yes.
connect after this. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
The next question is from Stephanie Prevost. Carly, could you share the list of the coastal resilience participant survey responses that you read off?
Share the list, like publish, is that what you mean? Like maybe, or in the chat, or I guess I don't understand.
I think, yeah, the responses that you just read off to all of us about like what participants wanted to see, and if you want to limit that list in any way, but if you do feel comfortable sharing it, if you want to share it with Sergio, and then Sergio could get it out to those who participated in today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you both. I don't have any other questions in the chat. And we will move on over to Christina Cranwell from San Diego State University. And Carly, I know you have to sign off soon, so thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you soon. So Christina?
Great, thanks, Althea. All right, everyone. Hello. Thank you again, Althea, for the introduction. My name is Christina Cranwell. I'm with the San Diego State University Field Station Program. More specifically, I am based out of the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve, one of 2 field stations that the university currently manages. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about our process of how we've been able to accomplish what we've been able to accomplish this past year, and a little bit about what we will be doing upcoming for year 2. Our field station director, David Lipson, he spoke a few weeks ago at the Translate Knowledge to Practice. So some things may carry over from that talk, and some things will be new and specific for this one. Before diving into what we've been up to, I just want to give a brief overview of the 2 reserves we currently manage and where they are. So the first is the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve. It's about 5,000 acres and it was established in 1962. This reserve sits on the San Diego County, Riverside County line and encompasses land in both Fallbrook and Temecula. It has quite a few sacred tribal lands on it. So when we talk about the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve, we are talking about the ancestral lands of the Pechanga tribe. It is also considered a critical wildlife corridor. So we protect the first 5 miles of the Santa Margarita River from the headwaters to where the river crosses into the Wildland Conservancy land in Fallbrook. Most of the habitat is coastal sage scrub, chaparral, oak woodlands, and then we do have about 15 acres that was carried over in agriculture due to a land acquisition for that parcel of land. The second field station that we manage is the Sky Oaks Field Station. This is out in Warner Springs, a little bit smaller, about 1,600 acres, and it is near Coombs Peak, which is the highest point of the Bucksnort Mountain Range. This land has a long history of fire ecology. As you can see from the photo currently showed, quite a few of that land had been burned. With that in mind, there has been quite a lot of fire research that has happened in the past there. And the habitat there is mainly chaparral with riparian areas of oaks and pines. So before we get into what we've been up to, we had quite a bit of work as a team to really just reflect on our current outreach, who we've been connecting to, and how we've been doing that. I do want to say, I think in this last year, we have stayed true to kind of moving at our own pace, not feeling too rushed to accomplish any one thing in particular, but definitely kind of feeling the waters and seeing where we wanted our focus and energy to be directed. So internally, we had some discussions on what really is important for us in outreach, how do we expand our capacity and reach more people. In the last couple of years, we have had less visitors, less usage at our reserves, so we did want to prioritize getting more people out. We wanted to identify opportunities that are already there, right? So we didn't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel, so to say, but we wanted to capitalize on the things that we've already been doing and to expand those to more communities. Lastly, we did also want to evaluate our outreach a little bit. So I've been working with our lovely docent volunteers a little bit about how we are talking about the things that we're doing to excite the communities that are currently coming out to the reserves. So by focusing internally a little bit, we were then able to set some goals and priorities for our external outreach and how we've been connecting and reaching communities. So we've been prioritizing reaching new groups, bringing people out to the reserves that have never been before. Expanding invitations to gather just within the spaces, see the land. A lot of people, especially within our campus community, have heard of the field stations but had never seen them. So we've been prioritizing trying to bring folks out. We hosted some more volunteer events this year, and we have set some goals going into year 2. So one of the first things that we were able to accomplish this year was we had a field visit out at Sky Oaks. So Sky Oaks definitely doesn't get a ton of love in terms of our field stations. Back in 2005, most of the facilities were destroyed in a fire out on that site. So it's not super accommodating for a lot of people to go out, but we did have a really nice day where we had representatives from multiple different tribes in the area. I believe Paula, Palma, and Pechanga were represented on this hike. We went down the trail through the chaparral, walked along one of the tributaries to the San Luis Rey, and I think it was really informative and insightful to both of our parties. Us as a field station team, we didn't quite realize that the area on that tributary used to be a gathering spot, which was shared with us due to the state of like the deer grass clumps and how they had been distributed in the area. So it was really cool for us to learn a little bit of that history. You can also see at the end of our visit on the photo on the bottom right over here, we did harvest some yucca at the end of it and enjoyed a snack from it, which was my first time trying, and it was really lovely to be able to have that experience with everyone. With this visit, we were able to have some conversations about what it looks like to expand opportunities at Sky Oaks. So we set the invitation to really come gather in that space whenever tribal communities would like to. We do have access to space for camping out there. We did also discuss the potential of doing some prescribed burns to really revitalize the habitat along that tributary to make it a great gathering space. Most of the year, we did kind of focus on ramping up our volunteer opportunities in our vineyard. Now, this wasn't necessarily shared specifically just amongst the next community, but it was an opportunity we wanted to look at going forward into next year to try to offer it as many people as possible. So our vineyard season runs from about March to September, and that encompasses a lot of the maintenance that needs to get done in the space, as well as a harvest and an in-house winemaking process. So in this top right photo up here, you can see Dr. Molly Clemens. She is the researcher that established our vineyard back in 2017, and she's sharing a little bit more knowledge on how to take actually Brix ratings over here. So that was during our wine harvest event. We have some volunteers down here in this bottom photo. The last couple years, we've had some mixed support with our endeavors in the vineyard. Some years we see a handful of volunteers, sometimes we see a few more. This year, we were able to offer this opportunity to 40 different volunteers. This encompassed not only vineyard professionals, students from SDSU, garden enthusiasts, and some neighbors and local community members, and they put in about 200 hours of volunteer work to help support this operation. So this was a year of us being like, wow, it's really possible to gather and have really great experiences throughout the year with folks in this space. So we're looking forward to expanding these opportunities to more communities next year. Another thing that had happened over at the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve was Pechanga did host a coming of age ceremony at Kamalumpumki. The photo that you're seeing on your screen right now, that was installed by the Pechanga Youth Group a number of years ago. So I did want to say, Carly mentioned before that these relationships, they don't happen overnight. They take many years of building and trust to accomplish these things. So this is something that our reserve manager, Pablo Bryant, had been working on in previous years to establish relationships with Pechanga to really give them access back to this ancestral space to feel comfortable here. So this was the third time Pechanga was able to host the ceremony here. They had about 200 visitors over the course of the weekend to be able to celebrate. And yeah, from what I heard, it was a really great experience. And for us as a reserve staff, we were really grateful to be able to facilitate access to the land for them to be able to have this ceremony. And we were able to help with a little bit of the land prep to make it happen. The last thing that we had worked on this year is we did currently have recently have a field trip with students from the Native American Studies program on campus and the Native Resource Center. So we had about 18 people out a few weeks ago to spend time down at the Santa Margarita River. So you're currently seeing a photo of where our river crossing is, where we got to gather and spend some time. This was a great field trip for us because it was also one of the few times that we have invited Pechanga to come out and speak to students themselves. So they were actually able to see some of the traditional huts that they had set up on the river and ask questions about what that ceremony was like, what the prep was like, and what it meant to Pechanga. One of the great things that came out of this was we were able to have more discussions on what we want field trips to look like in the future. So we are currently planning on inviting more members from Pechanga to come speak with students, regardless of the student's background. That way they are having a voice in describing the land and the space as well. Looking forward to year two, these are some of the things that we are going to be prioritizing. We currently are in the process of hiring an agriculture and facility support at the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve. We are looking to hire a tribal member from Pechanga. That way we can increase our knowledge sharing in land management and also provide just some support to our local community. We are also beginning talks on updating our gathering spaces. In particular, we do have a small classroom space on the north side of the reserve, and we are hoping to update this space not just for students to visit, but also for the Pechanga to have a gathering space that they love being in and they can really utilize. We also have had some talks about increasing resource sharing. So what that looks like for us is definitely helping to identify plants that can be foraged, facilitating access for that, and just making sure that the tribes have access to their land and being able to harvest things off of it. And we're going to continue to expand opportunities to get involved. I did mention our vineyard events this year, and we're looking forward to having more volunteer events that are open to everyone. I just wanted to give a shout out to some of the other people that do make these things possible on the reserves. So there's Dr. David Lipson. He is the SDSU Field Station Program Director. There's Pablo Bryant, who has been our reserve manager for a number of years. James Bordone is an on-site steward at SMER and helps to manage the agricultural operations in the Grove. And me, myself again, my name is Christina. I'm a technician and our Connects coordinator on site. If you're interested in getting involved, learning more, you can visit our website or you can check out our Instagram, which we got activated again, so you get real-time updates in what we're doing. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Christina. I have a couple questions for you. So one of them is, have you considered giving the land preserves back, Santa Margarita Preserve to Pechanga and then Sky Oaks Preserve to Los Coyotes? It sounds like there hasn't been any contact or partnership with Los Coyotes.
I did realize that in our initial visit to Sky Oaks, Los Coyotes was not initially invited, but since then we have reached out to extend the invitation for a trip with them themselves. As far as land back, I am not quite sure the status of those conversations. It's from my understanding that we may have had a few conversations in the past with our reserve manager, but I cannot speak directly on that.
Thank you, Christina. And then the other question is, what does your consultation process look like with California tribal nations? Are you providing opportunity for formal consultation?
So currently, a lot of our tribal connections have been held through our reserve manager, Pablo Bryant. He's been here for a number of years and does do a lot of the connections with local tribes. We are definitely always looking for opportunities to expand communication and conversation, and are definitely willing and open to consultation.
Thank you, Christina. And next on the agenda, our third presenter or fourth presenter for the day, Clarissa Rodriguez from San Diego State University. Clarissa?
Sorry, everybody. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all for joining. So excited to hear what others have been doing. So yeah, my name is Clarissa. I'm a postdoc at San Diego State. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing to evaluate oak responses to inform landscape stewardship. And so in my role here, I participate in 4 out of the 5 focus areas. And so I'll be talking a little bit. They're all connected, and so you'll see a little bit of everything through this talk. And so connecting ways of knowing is really one of the reasons I was brought on as a postdoc here with Connects. So my job really is to connect these fundamental Western science perspectives with cultural ecological knowledge, but really my main role is listening. So I spent a lot of my first few months here just going to tribal working groups, listening to what people were voicing in terms of what they wanted to see. And so really my project, my Connects project that I've been working on has two goals. The first is evaluating culturally significant species. So understanding why and how these plants are responding to global change. And lastly, guiding action. So hopefully the information that we're gathering across the state helps develop these climate-informed stewardship strategies. And so, like I mentioned, I spent a lot of the time just connecting with community at the tribal working groups, at different site visits. And here on the left, I'm showing a graph of this is from a resilient restoration working group, which preceded the Connects project. And this is showing habitat loss of several oak trees. And so oaks are some of the plant relatives that are very vulnerable to climate change and habitat loss due to more people moving in and things like that. So for today, I'm going to focus on 3 oak species. This is the coast live oak, as you see up here. Engelmann oak, which is really important for 90% of the distribution is only in San Diego County. And you can see here that it's projected to lose a lot of habitat. And then lastly, black oak. So all of these 3 were voiced as culturally important species. And so with input of others, of the tribal working group and other organizations, we came up with this project to try to understand more about why and where these vulnerable culturally important species are experiencing and how they're responding to climate change. And so, so focusing on those 3 species, I went ahead and collected a bunch of leaves and trait data from Santa Barbara and Chumash territory all the way to San Diego to Kumeyaay territory. And the goal really was to look at, is it something inherently about the plant ecology? So is it just changing how plastic it is? So maybe it's just really good at responding to climate change, or maybe it's kind of stuck and it's not really responding to climate change. And on the other side, looking at the genetics, or is there something on the genetic level that we're seeing adaptations? And the hope is to combine this information and give this information, of course, to our partners and the tribes that are involved in this to give them the data so then we can identify resilient populations that could be good candidates for restoration, more drought tolerant populations, or identify vulnerable populations. So maybe we can identify areas that really need our help now for conservation. And so the way that this has been done is using a suite of ecological traits, trying to really figure out how these species and populations across the state are really using the resources that are available to them, and also trying to measure how they're defending themselves. And so we're collecting bark thickness, bark allometry, wood density, carbon and nitrogen content, and other indicators. And on the right here, we're also taking genetics. This is mostly to look at how these populations may be communicating with each other and connecting. So how genetically diverse are they within the populations? And then we're looking at maybe our populations transferring genetic data. And this was something that was brought up at one of the tribal working groups. They wanted, somebody wanted to know how if populations from up north are transferring transferring genetics with populations down low. And so this is the information that will kind of help us get there. And so this is what the fieldwork was look like from April till basically September. I was out there in the field, so I really got to connect with the land and a lot of practitioners. And so here we're measuring the bark allometry to see, is there something about how thick and how furrowed the wood is. Here we're measuring diameter at breast height, which gives us an indicator of age. And then here we can see some examples of the fires that have hit these trees, but oaks are pretty resistant. We also saw evidence of bears going by up in Oak Glen, which is pretty exciting. I also saw some bears, which is real nice. And then I spent a lot of my time just fighting through a bunch of poison oak. But all that is worth it so we can learn more about our plant relatives and how we can potentially help them. And so here, this is a figure showing population on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, we took leaves and we measured carbon isotopes, and this is a really good indicator of how these plants are using water. So are they using it more efficiently? So if plants are more efficient at using their water, they would be up in these values, and if they're a little more less efficient, then they would be down here. And so here, the main takeaway is to see that these populations, even within each species, so here we have our coast live oak, here we have our Engelmann oak in blue, and in purple we have our black oak. And we can see that even though they're the same species, they are responding differently to their environment. And so this is giving us some food for thought about stewardship, maybe at the population level, really getting to know your local plant relatives and that populations and how they're responding. And here we have the same y-axis, but here we're just pooling all the species together just to show how variable they are. And so on the x-axis, sorry, this is a measurement that we call specific leaf area, which really is an indicator of how fast or slow these plants take up the nutrients that are available to them. And what we're finding is that black oak, which is deciduous, which means it drops its leaves every year, is actually pretty good at responding to changing its leaf structure to be more resource acquisitive when needed, but also to be more conservative when needed. And so it seems that this species is really tracking changes to climate change versus Engelmann oak and our coast live oak. They tend to be pretty standard. And so these are only some of our populations, but I just kind of wanted to show you all what we've been doing so far, and we're finding interesting changes in our populations. And as for the genetics, this will give us insights into the adaptation and the genetic transfer of species, but this is in progress, and so hopefully we'll get more insights on that. And so in terms of connecting ways of knowing, we're really taking this fundamental knowledge of where are these species, how are they responding, and why are they responding that way, with the hopes of letting us know of what strategies may be more useful. So putting that into practice, into active restoration, so taking those steps to restore or conserve populations where needed. And again, the purpose of this is just to get the data to then give back to the tribe so that they can incorporate traditional practices into these conservation efforts. And importantly, we want, the main point is for oaks to be resilient in the future. And so really aligning these restoration efforts with the climate projections so that we can ensure the long-term sustainability. And so this is the ongoing work that we're doing with these 3 species of oaks. But on the side, I've also been connecting with the La Jolla Band. So they had a cultural fire back in May. So we did some pre-vegetation surveys. So here's the active fire going on for the prescribed fire. So we went out and we did these transects, and we're trying to track basically what the effect of these cultural burns are bringing. So like what species may come up. So our plan is we're growing some of the seeds, some of the soil with the seeds in a greenhouse right now. But our plan is to come back in May and resurvey to see what new plant relatives may have popped up as a result of this cultural burn. And with that, I just want to say thank you. Kept it short.
Thank you, Clarissa. I have one question that popped up. It is, what Kumeyaay band are you working with that you're extracting from Laguna Mountain?
At Mount Laguna, we just got a permit for the Cleveland National Forest, and with that, during one of the tribal working group conversations, we had somebody from BrainCon who suggested to work in those specific areas because there were cultural gathering sites.
Thank you. And then the other looks more like a comment. Laguna Mountain is Kumeyaay land. Please include us when extracting from those homelands. And then, yeah, if any other questions pop up, we'll have more time for questions at the end. All right, presenter number 5. We have Gabriela Lasos from Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples. Gabriela, you want to make sure you could share your screen. If not, I do have a link to your presentation. All right,
Is it
awesome.
sharing?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, Etwanine Gabriela Lassos. I work with Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples as our research and program policy director. I want to apologize right off the bat. I'm starting to get a little sick, so if my voice gets scratchy or I start to go in and out, that's why. My pronouns are she, her. You guys can contact me at this email address listed here. Our website is currently under construction. I think it's been under construction for the last 6 months, but it's getting there. So as soon as it's up and running, I think there's a few areas where folks can still access, but as soon as it's up and running, we'll be sure to send a big email out to everyone so that folks can see what it looks like in its new form. So over the past year, we've been hosting, we hosted 2 listening sessions. We called them the Southern California Tribal Coastal Listening Sessions. We held one on July 20th in Alta Sea and Long Beach, which is Tongva territory. And then we had 26 participants come out to that. We collected 24 surveys. And then our second listening session was very much advertised on a much smaller scale. We were just hoping to focus in on South Orange County, so Hashimam and Luceño and Payamquecham lands. So we had a meeting at the State Parks District in San Clemente, and we had 14 participants come out, and we had 10 surveys collected. And then we also collected surveys at Moopatom. So I guess a little more context for these surveys. Our surveys were basically asking folks what their access to the coast looked like. So a few of the questions were basically, how long does it take you to get to the ocean? Are you able to practice your cultural practices on the coast? What's currently limiting your ability to practice your cultural practices? So we had folks fill those out. At Moopatom, at our listening sessions, and then at our listening sessions, we were able to go in greater depth and have conversations about those questions in the survey. So the connecting community, this slide is covering, has a bunch of pictures from our first listening session, which happened at Alta Sea in Long Beach. We had folks come together and write down different things that they saw as barriers to access, ways that they are able to access, and ways that they would like to see things change in terms of accessibility. A lot of the things recommended were land back, of course, and then working with state parks to get MOUs in order. And it was just really good conversations all around, just so that folks can start having access to the land that was taken away from them. And then the next slide, this is at San Clemente. Big shout out to CSA. We had a few of their staff come out to both events to help us facilitate and do a bunch of things. Diane took this picture. And then this blurry picture is from Moopatom. Yeah, our media team was only at, I think, the first event, so that's why it's super documented. And then the second one is oh wait, where's our media team? But it was really amazing to just have folks from, we had folks come out all the way from Kumeyaay homelands to the first listening session in July. Tongva, Ahashamam, Payam, and then there were a few folks from actually that came out from the Native Student Center at Cal State, not Cal State, UC San Diego to our San Clemente listening session. So it was really nice to have a bunch of folks share their stories about how they are able to and not able to access the coast. So I think in terms of just building relationships and reciprocity, our focus was bringing together tribes with ties to the coast and having them share about their ancestors' experiences as well as their own current experiences when trying to spend time with the ocean. We brought in community partners like uh, Cal Sea Grant, Heal the Bay, and we also had the California Coastal Commission share stories at our, or not share stories, but share presentations at our listening sessions so that they could share the work that they were doing and hoping to get more Indigenous folks involved. The Coastal Conservancy shared specifically about affordable housing on the coast and how that directly impacts. They wanted to hear how that directly impacts Indigenous peoples and our ability to even have housing along the coast. So that was a really fruitful conversation. And then our main goal through all of this work is to just continue building intertribal and intergenerational relationships so this work can continue past our lifetimes. I think in the next coming year, our big goal is to kind of step away from the focus groups and listening sessions and more go into like individual stories. So I'm going to go back a few slides if my computer lets me. And this little QR code at the bottom here, we're hoping to do interviews to hear about folks' relationships with the California Coastal Act. It's going to be turning 50, I believe, in 2026. So we're hoping to get ahead of the curve and hear from tribal folks about their relationships with the Coastal Act and how that Coastal Act has limited their tribe's ability to access the coast. And we're hoping to be able to gather information, share information, and of course go through the processes of Indigenous status sovereignty before any of that is shared with the state, to make sure that Indigenous people's voices are heard when that review is happening in 2026. But yeah, I know mine was probably one of the shorter presentations, but that's pretty much all I have for folks. I'll leave it on the QR code so folks can scan that if they want. But thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriella. Let's see, check the. No questions have popped up, but I will let you know if anything comes up towards the end of the presentations. We have one more presenter. Heather Constable from UC Santa Barbara Sedgwick Reserve. So Heather.
Great, thank you. All right. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Sedgwick Reserve, another field station, similar to the Santa Margarita Reserve, but administered by UC, and a program that we do here on our prescribed burn as part of our stewardship, research, education, and outreach initiative, and how working with the TREX, working with the Connects community this year has really changed this event much for the better, and then how we plan to learn from that. So our reserves are part of the UC Natural Reserve System. So each of the UCs administers from like 2 to 7 different reserves. We're part of UC Santa Barbara, which is mainly around the Point Conception area, although we do have some next to Mammoth Lakes. This whole area is under Chumash stewardship here. So we want to continue that legacy of responsible stewardship while incorporating the mission of research, education, and outreach in our activities on this land. Sedgwick Reserve is about 5,000 acres. We're this little t-shirt shape. It's north of Goleta in the foothills by the San Rafael Mountains, next to the town of Los Olivos, Solvang, and Buellton. And we have lots of natural and cultural resources throughout the reserve that we protect. So we limit access, except for researchers, people who are teaching college level classes or K through 12 classes, and some public events. So we have a field station, a venue, and it's a community hub for the area. And about 30% of our activities are research, 30% education, and then 60% community service. So we're a great place to facilitate and make connections. Our main activity would be the research projects. So on the land, researchers can stay overnight and then go out and work in the area with the foothills and oak woodlands. This is a place that Clarissa comes to do some of her research. We do a lot of oak restoration. Mainly our focus is on earth sciences and ecology. We do a lot of research on fire resilience, which is where it seems that we're heading. So we do have different funded projects. Researchers from all over California mainly come here to look at things like ecohydrology, weather, fuels and fire behavior, and moisture. We're also pretty well known for these large scale remote sensing projects. There's some that are put on by NASA. They've done a couple of these where they fly over satellites, planes, drones, and also have people on the ground truthing some of these measurements. So this helps meet some of the federal goals for better protection. And there's lots of things that you can do with the remote sense data. So with that in mind, we do have a, sorry, let me go this way, stewardship goals and a vegetation management plan in place. So the map here on the left shows some of the areas that we have under a vegetation management plan that we've worked out with Santa Barbara County that we would like to burn using prescribed burns over time. So these would be small scale burns, a couple of 20 acres or so at a time. And then try to reduce some of the fuels and bring fire back to the landscape. Just for context, just this summer, we were affected by the lake fire, which was a 38,000 acre wildfire that came in around July 5th. And it did burn, as you see on the map on the right, about half of the reserve. So that was the north and the eastern half. A lot of that was backfiring to protect the communities. I don't know if you could see my mouse here, but we do have communities that are in the wildland urban interface right up next to our border here and also on the other side, and some up along Figueroa Mountain Road. So our prescribed burn plan was meant to protect those areas. So those burns were closer to the communities. So it's not surprising that the wildfire affected the exact opposite of where we were planning to burn. So we had a choice to make. We've been planning prescribed burns every fall for the last couple of years, and we had to decide if we were going to continue. And so we did. A lot of people are relying on this training, and we call it the Prescribed Burn Training Exchange, or TREX for short. It meets a lot of goals. So those are people from lots of different backgrounds who are here to learn about how to do prescribed fire, how to do intentional fire, and controlled fire. So it meets some of our community objectives, which, were theoretically before, but now we have neighbors who've been affected by wildfire, and we've had communities who've been through this. So everybody is very concerned about these risks that they have to homes and lives. So we're doing this training in the context of a real life scenario. There's also cultural outcomes that everybody was very interested in. We surveyed the trainees ahead of time and asked them what they would like to learn about. And they really wanted to learn about cultural fire and indigenous practices and how fire fits into the natural landscape. So of the students this year, we took in about 40 students. 10 of them were Indigenous and had support either through stipends. Also helped coordination with the Native Coast Action Network and the Climate Science Alliance. Another goal would be our research opportunities. So we'll take opportunity to get through some of the prescribed burning that we want to do, to train people how to do the prescribed burning and build capacity and build up the workforce that actually do this kind of work. And then also the research that we're trying to accomplish. So unlike wildfires, we're able to put out monitors ahead of time. We're able to do some prep. We're able to take measurements and do post, during, and prior to the fire comparisons, which are really valuable for research. So this year was our first year that we were involved with the Connects. We have worked with a couple of players like Teresa with the Native Coast Action Network in previous years. This year, I think, was really different. We had a very meaningful relationship, and we were brought in to do in the organization committees very early on and continued throughout and after the event, which I really appreciated. A lot of these, there's so many different organizations. There's 55 that actually participated in the end. And I think there were about 10 that helped coordinate it. And it tends to be very nebulous and organic, and people come together when they can. So to have the capacity and the time to actually fold that into our learning objectives and our training objectives was really, really good this year. Among the other organizations, there's federal, state, county, there's land trusts, research groups, PG&E, utilities were here, businesses and nonprofits, and then researchers and observers from 7 different universities, including NASA and the Desert Research Institute. We also had staffers from Assemblymember Hart, Irwin, Supervisor Hartman, and U.S. Senator Lamone's office who came out. We also welcomed journalists and writers, and National Geographic was actually doing a video on the Dangerman Preserve, which we were burning during the same week during the different training opportunity. So there's a lot of different people who came out, and it was a great opportunity for all these different organizations to meet and actually do work together and good fire on the ground. So we were lucky enough to have Carly Dominguez and Teresa Romero be part of the training exercises for the trainees. Like I said, they're really interested to learn more about cultural burning. And just some of my observations, even though I wasn't a direct trainee, and comparing this to previous Trex events, is that it changed the whole, it seems like it changed the whole event. It changed the whole way that we approach this. And it was really transformative. So a lot of the people come from a fire suppression background. So you're trying to protect life and homes, and you get in there and you destroy whatever you have to do to meet your objective at the time. And there's not a lot of, it's kind of, you have to work and make decisions on your feet during an emergency. A prescribed burn, it's a planned burn. We take months and months to plan these out. There has to be certain weather events that align. We have to have the right temperature and wind and humidity, and we have it all planned and prepped and ready to go. But it's also still very militaristic, the way that it's organized and the way that it's carried out. To have the cultural perspective with a different history, it aligned different goals. And so the prescribed burn, a lot of that comes from rangeland management, where you're trying to get rid of things so there's more room for cattle. You're trying to introduce non-native grasses. With the cultural perspective, Carly showed a couple of really good videos about basket weavers being the decision makers when you're talking about cultural burning. And it's more of a community approach where the whole family is involved, and you have things that are actually supporting the local community on a smaller scale. There's a great respect for the land and animals, which sometimes in the fire suppression world, it's just a different kind of mindset, and a lot of reverence and a sense of responsibility from the trainees that they were doing something really important and really good for the earth. And as well as for the communities and the plants and animals involved. So it really set the whole context and tone for the event. So I just wanted to show you some pictures with the time that we have remaining. I have a couple of videos of what it looks like. So when the participants arrive, we have to get them all geared up, and it's set up like an incident command team where there's people in charge of directing different squads who have different jobs. We have to get them set up with their fire tents. So they have the PPE, the yellows you see everybody in. We were able to borrow some of those from Cal Poly. These are fire tents in case you get into a really bad situation. You're able to hunker down and protect yourself from fire in like a ditch. We need radios, batteries, tools. Hand tools are really important to check out. And then we prep the site. And every day we have meetings. We have meetings in the morning, meetings in the evening. Everybody has a role to play and a timing. And this is an example of one of those communication meetings where the National Geographic team was trying to film. Is wearing this kind of camera backpack while they're directing the burn that's going to happen in Dangermond. We cut lines around the area where we're going to burn so the fire won't spread. This is a pumpkin. It's full of water and it's connected to a hose line that goes in between the burn units. This group is called the FEMO team, which is the Fire Effects Monitors. That's a training job that you can work towards. So they're constantly checking with spot checks on the fire, the wind direction, and everything to make sure things are going well. And then we also have a contingency backup from Santa Barbara County, Vandenberg, and State Park. So while the trainees were working on the fire, we have these other agencies standing by in case they have to swoop in and do something. So this is a dozer. He has a very important job. I have a thing about dozer lines on the reserve, but he does serve his purpose and he's very good at what he does. And then finally, if the conditions are just right, we can actually start the burn. And the burns are begun with these diesel torches. This guy's carrying a diesel torch, which he's putting to some of the sagebrush to start the burn. And if everything's going well, the smoke is being carried up and out over the communities. The APCD board, which is the Air Quality Control Board, is watching the event closely. And the grape growers nearby are very concerned about smoke taint. So it's very important that we have that collaboration with them. And then we got the fire going pretty well and things were calm that day. I'm going to show you a video real quick. The conditions changed quite quickly. As Teresa pointed out, there was a rainbow on one side and then a storm cloud coming in the other, and the winds kind of picked up when this happened. So this might be kind of loud, just it's a 20-second video. So that was a oak tree that the crown got torched. Normally the fires are really low and slow and are just on the grasses and shrubs. The fire, when the wind picked up, got into the crown of that oak. So I think we're probably going to lose that oak tree. Here's another video of when we called in the contingency groups. They were standing by, but when the wind picked up with that storm and rainbow, we called in a helicopter. And they were able to, they had the helicopter had a belly full of water that they could drop in different spots instead of all at once, which was really interesting. And this is kind of what it looks like in the end. The fire is really low and calm. It's mainly in the grasslands. The trees are all intact. This was at Dangermond Reserve. The fire went into the evening a little bit when the sun set. And then you have people who are standing around watching it and mopping it up through the night to make sure it doesn't get out of hand and putting it to rest. And here's some people who are watching the mop up efforts. And in the morning, they bring in more hoses. They make sure everything's nice and cool. We monitor it for several weeks afterwards. And I'll show you one last video here. This is a drone operator looking for hot spots with his drone.
We're here doing a thermal inspection, looking for any hot spots in the green as part of our mop-up and cleanup operations, being sure that things are cold out at the end of the burn. We're here doing a thermal inspection, looking for...
Try to advance that How do we get out of there? Okay. So in the spring, following up, we'd like to invite you for a fire followers tour to come and see if there's any fire following plants. So we'll revisit the burn areas from previous years and look how they've changed through time. If you want to connect with me, this is my contact information. We're really looking forward to the treks next year. I think there were some really great lessons learned. I'd like to see a cultural treks out here if we have the capacity for that. We would love to support that, but reach out and contact me anytime. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Sergio, for putting Heather's email in the chat. I don't have any questions popping up right now, but if something comes to mind in the next few minutes as we close out this webinar, please feel free to put it into the Q&A. Do you see the presentation screen? Yes, okay. So for anybody who's not familiar or connected with Connects, please visit our blog, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on Instagram. We're always sharing something in one of those three areas, so definitely get connected, stay connected. And then as part of this webinar series, we do have one more session on January 7th, in which our team on the entrepreneurship side will be sharing about the work that they're doing and the opportunities they are providing to our partners and community, and advancing community entrepreneurship opportunities. So definitely join us. You can register at the QR code in the top right corner. And then I'm sure Sergio or Kara will put the registration link in the chat. Be sure to register and join us. But we want to thank you all for joining us today. Feel free to contact us at info@connects.org. Check out our website, or you can reach out to Kara Connor or Sergio Morales if you have anything specific. But yes, thank you for joining us. We hope you all have a good week, and we look forward to you joining us on January 7th.